Tucker, I'm a big fan of yours for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that it's your company and your encouragement that got me to finally complete the writing of my first book and get it published by Hay House Publishers and put it out in the world. And you do this routinely, but ultimately, I know this is what maybe your daily activities and what your company does, but you are, a self-made man. You're an entrepreneur. You're somebody who's figured out how to go into the world and create your own income and be self-employed as compared to going to work for someone else. So I figured maybe your varying worlds would collide and that you might have some value to add to these people who are searching for a solution. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Of course, man. My pleasure. Anything for you, Patrick? You and Jeff, happy to.
Thank you. And then secondly, I see you're at home and you're surrounded by a lot of books, which I guess is apropos. So let's dig in. I know you've read at least some, if not most of them. So you've got all this knowledge in your brain. So let's dig in and talk about, the scenario. We're in the midst of this, COVID pandemic. We're still to a degree in what they call the social distancing and quarantine and what have you. But let's talk about maybe your thoughts around what it takes to go from being a person who works for somebody else or a company and saying, I need to take control of my life and create my own income. So what thoughts do you have around that?
Yeah, so a lot. So just a little background. I've worked for basically, not counting like high school jobs at the mall and stuff, I've had 2 real jobs and I was fired from both. I was a lawyer. I made it 2.5 weeks and I got fired. Then I worked for my father. He owns a big restaurant company in South Florida that had, at the time, I forget how many restaurants, 5 or 6. My dad fired me from the family business. So since 2002, I've pretty much had to eat what I kill, right, so to speak. And so I've been, and early on, I was so bad at this, Patrick, that I'm not kidding. This is, like I say this jokingly, but it is the God's honest truth. There was an extended period in my life where the only way I was eating protein was if I picked up a girl who had a job because I couldn't afford it, man. I'm telling you, there were some sketchy situations I got myself into because I'm like, this girl can afford a whole rack of ribs and she's gonna bring it to my house. So I'm in, I don't care. No, seriously, that was not even, I'm 44 now, that was 18, 19 years ago, so it wasn't that long, right? I can still remember eating ramen and being like, man, when's the last time I had steak? So I've been there. And now, obviously, like, I'm not at your level living in the mountains of Utah yet. I'm still in Texas, but I'm doing all right. And so what I want to do is I want to walk through, there's a couple different stages, right? And I've been ringing this bell for people for a long time, me and a lot of other people. I'm not the only one, obviously, but I've been ringing the bell a long time that we are moving to an economy and a world where essentially everyone is going to work for themselves to some degree or another, right? And I don't mean, when I say work for yourself, I don't mean like you or I and have their own businesses necessarily, right? Although a lot of people will be entrepreneurs, and that ball's already rolling. But we're going back in a certain way because people don't really, no one in America, one of the benefits of this library is I remember history, not because I lived it, but because I can read other people's memories, right? And so like us and our grandparents, basically, not our great grandparents, but us and our grandparents grew up in a world, the post World War world. So pretty much after World War I, it really started. And then after World War II, it was all in, right? A world of massive organizations, whether it's governmental bureaucracies or corporations, and a world of unified, unitary media, a world of sameness, right? Whether it's a media sameness, corporate sameness, like everything that people rebelled against in the 60s and all that, that was the world we grew up in. And so we've forgotten that our great-grandparents grew up in a world that had none of that. That everyone, just think about when the Spanish flu came through in 1918. A deadly pandemic, like it killed young people, unlike COVID, right? It killed a lot of young people. Part of the reason was because, I don't know if you know this, at the time aspirin was new, and this is a true story. You can look this up. This is crazy. Aspirin was new, and doctors were basically thinking it was like a miracle cure. And so they were recommending like crazy amounts of aspirin as a cure for Spanish flu. And of course, we know now that kills you. So it may have been that a lot of the reason that young people died, a lot of young people, is because they were taking aspirin.
Well,
like seriously.
Incidentally, I have the same concern here with how fast they're trying to get a drug or a vaccine.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But
nonetheless, let's hope we don't repeat our past mistakes.
Of course. But the reason I bring this up is because Spanish flu, although it killed a lot of people, did not have a huge impact on the world economy. Not the way, obviously, that coronavirus had, even though the world did have something akin to a quarantine lockdown sort of phase. Nothing like we have now because the world wasn't as connected. But there were, whole cities. St. Louis shut down. There are entire cities that put up the gates, right? So how did they not collapse? Because everybody had chickens in their backyard. Everyone had a pig. Everyone had access. And if they didn't, then you bought your milk from your neighbor. You bought your meat from the guy 2 doors down. You got your shoes from the guy 3 blocks over. Everything was local, right? And so communities, although they weren't as efficient as they are now, they were far more resilient, right? And so I think that is actually where we're going. Back to, it won't be exactly like that because things won't be dirty and awful and whatever, but like it'll be something very similar. And that's when I say everyone's going to work for themselves. I think I've been telling people this for years. I honestly did not predict that a global pandemic would create this. I thought it was going to be sovereign wealth defaults, but the pandemic may end up creating the sovereign wealth defaults. But the point is, the system, whether you're talking about corporations, governmental bureaucracies, or anything like that, got too big, and they became parasites. And it was just the quarantines that are breaking them. That's it, right? And so now everyone's realizing after 2 months at home, oh, most of what I had in my life was. People haven't really figured out yet that global supply chains are broken. They're like, I have a good friend who's big in commercial fishing, and he told me the other day, he's like, dude, 95% of the boats are done, and they're not coming back. Like, I don't know how many are going to come back. 95% of the operations are done. He said, if we're lucky, a third come back. If we're lucky, because like the supply chains for seafood, the global supply chains for seafood are very, very complicated, right? Because to get it frozen or to get it shipped places fresh is just a lot of moving parts. And he's like, dude, I'm just telling you, go buy whatever you want now, because you're not getting baby octopus from China anymore or whatever, right? It's like, it's not happening. Like, so go buy what it is. He's like, and short sushi restaurants. Like, if you own a sushi restaurant, sell that money now. And that's just one of dozens, hundreds of supply chains that are going to be breaking. Now, that's short term, right? Short term, there's going to be a lot of these problems. Long term, what I'm really bullish on is the ingenuity of humans, especially Americans, right? Because as screwed up as our governments are and are being in a lot of ways about this, I think that the cat's out of the bag, right? For Americans, we have too much wealth and too many guns, and we've been free for too long. Eventually, the pendulum's going to swing back, and so we're going to have to not just reshore manufacturing. That's like obvious and easy, but there are 100 things in your house right now that in a year, in 1 month to 1 year, are either going to be 4 times as expensive or aren't going to be available, and then we're going to have to find alternates, right? So who makes those alternates and where do they come from? There's a massive opportunity right now for just about anyone to do just about anything that is being done, let's just say outside of North America, right? If it's Canada, Mexico, it'll probably be okay. South America, maybe. But if you're across one of the other 2 oceans, if what's made is across one of those 2 oceans, you have an opportunity to build the replacement for it domestically now.
Thanks so much for being here and watching that video. And can I ask you to please subscribe to our channel so you can find out when we're posting new content. You'll be alerted right away when we do. To share this with people you think might benefit from the information, and certainly it helps us if you like the video. So if you like what you just saw, go ahead and hit that like button. And again, thank you so much for being here with me right now.